Doing things for the first time is one of the best ways to slow down time. In other words, if you keep on doing the same things over and over again, time seems to fly by much faster. For quite a while I had wanted to get into power carving, and this oak bowl was the perfect opportunity to take my first steps without messing up a bigger project. I also made this bowl as a last-minute Christmas present for my sister and her husband, so in this particular case, time wasn't slowing down, it was speeding up. So let's see if I made it on time. I had this heavy chunk of oak laying around. It was full of gnarly knot holes, but at least the figuring was pretty. I started by securing it in place with screws and laying out the diameters to keep the shape as close as possible to a circle. The disc I used on the angle grinder scrapes off the wood with its burrs. It's not easy to control and leaves heavy marks, which I had to clean up later on. This project was also very different from everything else I have done before. Usually I design things in SketchUp first and plan everything out before making the first cut. Power carving, however, is more like sculpting. You can have a rough sketch or an idea in your mind, but most of the work happens spontaneously. It's a bit of a risk, removing enough material to get closer to your vision without taking off too much. So it's all about finding the right balance. Once I reached the desired depth, I flipped the chunk over to shape the underside of the bowl. I used small pieces of scrap wood bread nailed onto the work surface to keep the bowl in place. By the way, I know I look like a kid dressed up as an astronaut, but the protective gear was absolutely necessary because the dust was flying everywhere. Later I even found dust behind my ears, despite all the protection. A few days prior I met up with a local chimney sweep. It was getting colder and I was thinking about installing a wood stove in my workshop since I was producing tons of cut-offs and shavings from milling. He is also a hunter and told me about wolves returning to this region after having been nearly extinct for a long time. During the last harvest he saw 3 wolves emerging from a cornfield. These wolves also pose a great threat to dogs, so encounters in the woods can get pretty sketchy. That said, I've never seen a single wolf around here. Or maybe they're just really good at hiding? Anyway, next I filled the cracks and knot holes with black epoxy. Beforehand I used hot glue to build little dams to prevent the epoxy from spilling over. I also sealed the cracks on the underside with hot glue, which worked pretty well, so there wasn't much spilling. The hardest part was waiting for the epoxy to fully cure. But once that was done, I could finally take this still rough-looking bowl to the next step. To cut out a perfect circle with the router, I temporarily glued a piece of particle board to the top as a support piece. The final diameter is 40 centimeters or 15.7 inches, which isn't too big or too small, in my opinion the perfect size. At the beginning I mentioned how the burr disc left deep, ugly marks in the wood. Call me a shopping addict or a smart investor, but while learning about power carving on YouTube I stumbled across the gold standard of carving tools, Arbortech. These discs don't scrape the wood fibers with burrs, they shave them off. I got a special disc with 3 blades set at a negative angle, which produces an incredible smooth cut. In fact, you can remove tiny amounts of material and it feels like using an eraser. At some point you have to decide when to stop power carving and start smoothing the surface. In this case my very limited time played a big role in that decision, because this was literally the day before Christmas and I was working on 2 other projects simultaneously. To make the upper rim of the bowl parallel to the underside, I used the joiner first and let the planer do the rest after flipping the bowl upside down. This worked like a charm, but the cracks kept reappearing, so I had to go back again and again with black CA glue to seal them. Then I could finally start smoothing the surfaces. I have to say, this Arbortech disc is perfect for that. At first holding the angle grinder steady was tricky, but the learning curve was steep. Usually I love using power tools, but smoothing out the underside with a hand plane was incredibly satisfying. One of my favorite podcasts recently debated why gym culture is so popular nowadays. Of course, people want to look attractive and being fit is great for your health, but my favorite theory was going to the gym is a way to reenact traditional physical labor. Harvesting crops, chopping wood, or other tasks humans have done throughout history but are missing from modern workplaces. I feel like that's one of the main reasons I'm so obsessed with building things. There's nothing better than feeling physically exhausted and seeing a great end result. Next I started sanding, which meant I was getting close to finishing this project. If you're still watching, I really appreciate it and I hope you enjoy the content I'm putting out here on YouTube. Taking this channel to the next level requires way more effort than I expected when I started last summer. So every comment and like helps a lot, but only if you feel like it, of course. By the way, the boards I was carrying away in this shot were part of one of the other projects I was finishing alongside the oak bowl. Hopefully that cliffhanger works on you, but let's get back to the final part of this project. Speaking of finalizing, it was Christmas Eve when I applied food safe oil to the oak bowl and it soaked up like a sponge. I lost count of how many coats I applied, but look at this color. I even started second guessing whether this was really oak or something else. And in the end, I finished on time. My sister was super happy and so was I. By the way, I'm curious. Do you prefer giving or receiving handmade gifts, or do you like something simple that can be ordered online? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching and see you next time.